Are you like most sales and other professionals who want to grow their wealth faster than what they are currently doing through their company 401k, even with that company match, the stock market, or just plain saving money? Would you sleep better at night if you had the financial freedom to be job optional in just 3 to 5 years through investing in real assets? Maybe you don't want to stop working, but wouldn't it be cool if you could retire a decade earlier than most and do the traveling you and your family have planned for years while you're still young and can enjoy it? Let's face it, most busy professionals don't have the time or desire to take on more work outside of their W-2 to grow their wealth. On The Wealth Flow, each week we share the stories, the investments, and take a deep dive into the various asset classes that can deliver that accelerated growth to your portfolio passively. That's right, no extra work for you. Instead, we'll put your money to work. Learn what the 95% aren't talking about and join the top 5% of earners today on The Wealth Flow.
All right, welcome to The Wealth Flow. My guest today is Kevin Bupp. He is a Florida-based real estate investor. He's got a top Apple podcast host. He's a top podcast host on Apple. And I actually listened to his podcast. So we were talking a little bit before the show. He's also a best-selling author, the cash flow investor with over 300 million in real estate transactions under his belt. Based on his decades of experience, Kevin has identified mobile home parks and parking lots as the top real estate investments in the current market. On his podcast, Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow, he shares his 20 years of experience guiding millions of listeners on how to find and invest in profitably in commercial real estate. He is also, his private equity firm is called Sunrise Capital Investors. And Kevin, I've been looking forward to this. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, Keith, thanks for having me, man. Looking forward to it as well. So excited to be here.
Yeah. One thing I always like to start with, if it works okay for you, is just really starting with your background. You know, where did you grow up and what eventually led you to real estate?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And so I grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. It's actually the capital of Pennsylvania. A lot of folks don't know that, but it is. But it's not a big town. I mean, it's a city, but it's not a huge area. And so I grew up there and found my, I'll try to provide the condensed version of it. You know, went to high school, never loved school. Always just struggled with it. It was boring to me. And so if I'm bored with something, I've come to find after, being on this earth for 44 years, almost 45 years, is that if I'm bored with something, I've got to switch it immediately. And unfortunately, you can't switch, can't switch going through grade school and high school and all that. But ultimately knew that when I graduated, that I need to do something else other than just follow that academic path. However, I didn't know what that was. And so I went to community college, didn't want to burn up all my parents' money by going off to university, and I probably would have partied out of it anyway. Right. And so I stayed local. I got a job bartending. And during that period of time, I started dating a girl, and this girl's mother had a boyfriend, and he happened to be a local real estate investor by the name of David. And I just, see him around the house and became good friends with him. He's about 25 years older than I, and just got to learn a little bit about what he did. And his lifestyle seemed very different than mine growing up. And just was a neat guy, and was always open to have a conversation about his life, his business, what he did on a daily basis, which was very different than what I was used to with my parents. I had a dual working household, and my parents worked. I was about to say 9 to 5. My dad will work literally 9 to 5, and my mom would typically work like the third shift. She worked at Blue Cross Blue Shield just so we get insurance, but they did that sacrificing so we can she worked that job just to have good insurance for the family. But my mom and dad didn't see each other. It was kind of in passing. And so, but again, they did what they did to provide a life for my brother and I. But fast forward, after I got to know David for a little bit, he invited me. I knew what he did, but I didn't know what he did. I didn't know anything about real estate investments. I mean, I understood that he had rental properties and people lived there that paid him rent on a monthly basis, but that was to the extent of it. But he invited me to a conference down in Philadelphia, a 3-day conference. His business partner couldn't go. He'd already paid for it. And I was like, what the heck? I was like, I don't even know what I have no idea what the agenda is. Don't know what to expect. Don't know what I'm going to walk away with. But I attended with him because he paid $5,000 for it, and I was like, okay, he's giving me a ticket for free. I'll go. I'll attend. Right? I mean, worst case scenario, I learned something new. And when I got back from that, I was just super excited. Met a lot of people that didn't seem all that different than I. They just had some additional knowledge I didn't have. And they were, at that point, some of them were wholesalers, some were, fixers and flippers. But just talking to guys and gals that were doing, just even flips making, or wholesale deals making 5, 10, 15K. And that was a lot, man. That just seemingly was a lot of money to me to not have to do a lot of work to actually do those types of deals. And so I came back from that. And I essentially went to David and I was like, I got to learn more. And if I don't do something, this is just going to pass, right? I'm going to forget about it. And then I'll go back to the normal routine. And I didn't want to do that. And so I basically offered my services to him for free. I saw he was about 25 years older than I. And so I saw some of the challenges he had in his business. I didn't know too much about it, but I did know that he was a lot older and he wasn't good with technology. So I saw him struggle with that on a few occasions. Right. I also knew that he was kind of a one-man show. And he always seemed to be doing things that he probably shouldn't be doing, like admin type stuff and, dropping off leases and going to Home Depot and picking up some material, dropping them off at a job site. Like he had some inefficiencies, and I identified that. And I was like, I think I can help make your life a little easier. And I just want to kind of be around you and hear your conversations and what it is you do. And so he accepted the offer. And fast forward 14 months after that, I bought my first property after following him around, learning the lingo and understanding just the basics of his business model. I bought that first property with some bartending money I had saved up. I was just about to turn 21, so I bought it when I was 20. And that was the start of it. I mean, I bought that first one. And then, I wanted to follow his model because I'm not a big fan of reinventing the wheel, and I'm not a big fan of fixing things that aren't broken. And what he did seemingly worked. And he was mostly a buy and hold guy. However, he'd been doing it for like 30 years, right? And so he just had a little bit of experience and capital under his belt that I didn't have. And so I learned very quickly that first house that I intended to hold and just hold as a rental, that, it was roughly about $300 a month of positive cash flow. It was going to take a very long time between that and, my bartending money to save up enough money to go buy the next rental. And so for that reason, I switched the model. I sold that house. And then I basically got into a flow of wholesale, 3 or 4 houses, keep one. Wholesale, 2, 3 or 4 houses, keep one. And that's how I started. I did that for the first couple of years and then just really saw an explosion from there. And, in my early 20s, I was able to build up a portfolio of about 150 single family rental properties, a few hundred apartment units. And then fast forward a few more years from that, got into commercial real estate. I've owned a little bit of everything: office, retail, self-storage, industrial, you name it. And that leads us up to about 2008. And that's when things went the wrong direction, is the best way to put it. And so had major challenges. I was down here in Florida. Florida was ground zero for Florida, Phoenix, Arizona, Las Vegas, and for the most part, California and all of Florida were just like absolute decimated during the '08 financial crisis. And so, I went in damage control, Keith, for about 3 years, and just didn't buy anything else. Just literally was trying to manage what I had. And that didn't go too well. I mean, it was a very different landscape down here in Florida, as far as the economy was concerned than what it is today. It's a very much more diverse and robust economy than what it was back then. And so anyway, I took a 3-year hiatus, damage control, worked my way through it, lost my primary residence, lost, the majority of the real estate, worked with lenders, had really bad credit for many, many years following that. Just a big, major struggle. But, with all that, I put my big boy pants back on in roughly 2010, 2011 and jumped back into it. And that's really what got me into what I'm in today. A conversation I had with a gentleman by the name of Randy, who used to finance mobile home parks when he was a commercial banker, retired, bought a couple mobile home parks here in Florida. And he sold me during a 2-hour lunch. He sold me on all the positive aspects of the mobile home park space, which was an asset class I had never considered before. And that from that lunch meeting, I went out and I vowed to go buy a mobile home park. I had intended to buy multifamily to rebuild things because I knew it was more efficient than the single family stuff. But he turned me down a different path, and I did. I went and bought a park up in Atlanta. It was a REO, a complete mess, vacant, entirely vacant. Vandalized, this, that, and the other, and bought bought that. That went, turned that around, bought the second one, bought the third one. In fact, I even had that parking land up until about 2 years ago. So held it for roughly a decade. And,
Nice.
fast forward today where we've got parks in, I think 14 different states at the present time. We've been buying parks for over a decade and, way back before they were cool. Now they're the hottest thing. And then, backing up 5 years, we also started buying parking lots and parking garages as well. So those are our primary verticals at Sunrise Capital Investors: mobile home parks, parking garages. But I do have personal investments across a litany of other asset classes. Again, self-storage is a big one, medical office, industrial, things like that. So with that, I'll stop talking and see if you have any clarifying questions.
Yeah. So, first, it just sounds like an amazing journey. And starting out, it sounds like you got very big in the single family side before you switched over to commercial. 150 something homes?
It's actually 146 is what it ended up being, but yes, close to 150,
Okay.
and about 300 apartment units as well. So. Yeah, good. Like I didn't reinvent the wheel. Basically what happened is I moved from Pennsylvania back in '02 down to the Tampa Bay area, and moving to Tampa's not a big city by any means, but it sure as heck was big compared to where I came from. And the real estate market down here was very progressive. I mean, it was like a 9-day difference. I mean, homes actually appreciated where I came from, where I was born. Like homes, maybe like 1% a year or 2%. Like it was very minimal. You could look at a 10-year trend and see that maybe it only went up 6%, right, in some areas. Sometimes actually decline, but so very different. I moved down here, down to Florida, and I, within the first 6 months of moving here, I actually met someone who's still a really close friend today, Rod Cleef. I met him and his family, and he lived about an hour south, and he had a really big portfolio down here. I kind of linked up with him and his brothers. I was able to tap into the local market really quickly, and really, piggyback on some other guys that were already doing big things. And so I really hit the ground running and built up quite a big portfolio fairly quickly. And lost a lot of it. And then now here we are again, rebuilding much stronger and in a much better way the second time around.
Yeah. What are maybe some of the lessons that you learned from that time frame?
Yeah. No, it's
is there any, question. In other words, is there anything that you've done different? Obviously, I don't want to say we're in there's parallels to what we're going through right now. At least it seems, but I'd like to get your opinion on that.
And like I said, there's a lot of things that are different today than what they were back then. But let's talk about some inefficiencies. Back then there wasn't the type of technology that exists today as far as virtual lock boxes and, various apps that allow you to create a lot of efficiencies in the leasing side of the property management business, right? Even being able to manage, handyman and things like that is much more efficient. I'm not going to say it's the problem solved, but back then we owned stuff in 5 counties. It was spread out all over the place, and it was a pain in the ass to manage, and it just cost a lot of money, a lot of gas, and just doing showings. Think about it. We had leasing agents that were bouncing around the different areas. I mean, it was a very expensive endeavor on the property management side. But on top of that, one of the other big things that really that was really impactful was back in '04 was the first of the big hurricanes that hit down here, at least, during the time that I owned. It was Hurricane Charlie hit in 2004, and it hit in an area where I owned a lot of houses. And so, immediately following that, insurance costs went through the roof. And so again, very akin to kind of what's happening today. Insurance costs just are astronomical, and they've increased, 2x, sometimes 3x, maybe even more than that in some areas. But, so that was a big part. But then also, when I look back, and I'm honest with myself, although the portfolio cash flowed, when you really factor in all those other variables, it really didn't. It didn't. It didn't have a sustainable cash flow. And so I found myself in the scenario where a lot of times we'd have to sell, a few properties, here and there just to, make up the difference, and just to, have money in our pocket. So while we had equity, we had appreciation. Obviously, that whole model falls apart very quickly when homes actually start losing value. And on top of that, as we went into '08, everyone's had this ongoing dialogue that, rents never go down. And I'll tell you, that is the farthest from the truth. And I experienced it firsthand. And actually now I've seen a number of headlines. There's a number of markets where they've actually seen some rent declines and some concessions that are being given and things like that based on maybe it's an oversupply or some other factors local to that market. But, just when I compared it to the apartment complexes that we owned, it just seeing literally, 48 roofs, in this one location, or 72 was the biggest we had. So they're mostly smaller complexes, but the efficiencies were just like a night and day. And those things seemed to hum along, although they had their challenges. They seemed to hum along in a much more efficient manner than that of the spread out portfolio that was, spread out amongst 5 different counties. So and on top of all that, Keith, again, being honest with yourself when you look back and just say, what could I have done better? I was single back then. I wasn't married. I had a girlfriend, but I didn't have kids. I didn't have, adult responsibilities. I was an adult, but I didn't have adult responsibilities. And the amount of time that it took me to assemble those 146 homes was ridiculous. I mean, like, it was, marketing out the wazoo, billboards and bandit signs and taking calls all hours of the night and just, going on 10 calls of people that respond to one of our ads and literally maybe buying 1 out of 10, 1 out of 20, and just like literally spending hours in strangers' homes trying to do a deal, right? Like, that is inefficient. I mean, there was a better way to skin the cat, and ultimately what I identified, multifamily was definitely that better way. And then as time went on, I realized that there was many other asset classes that were just more efficient. And now today it's mobile home parks and parking, but those are some of the big things. Single family, I've got friends that still make a lot of money in single family. I think they do, right? I've never seen their P&Ls, but they wouldn't have stuck with it, I don't think, for as long as they had if they're actually not doing well. But a lot of them actually, that's their primary business. Most of them own in like the Midwest, where there's a little bit more of a delta, between where home prices are to where rents are. Down here, that wasn't necessarily the case either. It was really hard to find anything in that. The 1% rule didn't really exist, but it was very difficult to actually meet that 1% rule down here, at least back in that period of time. So anyway, I'll see if you have any clarifying questions there. That was a long answer to your question.
No, it was a good answer for sure, and very, very interesting. What about just kind of a difference, right? You've owned large multifamily. You gravitated now the second go around towards mobile home parks. What are some of the things that you see with mobile home parks that you feel are better than the multifamily? And maybe it's not. You can kind of describe what you're seeing as a difference, but why does Sunrise Capital Investors invest in those two assets?
Yeah, I don't want to say that it's that it's better, right? I mean, there's a million different ways to make money in real estate, and everyone has its own pros and cons. But the couple of things that really were intriguing to me, at least back when I decided to go down this path and buy that first one. Number one was lower turnover. Most of our residents, like 90% of our residents, own their own home, and so they rent the lot from us. And we've got some tenants. I was actually having this conversation the other day. I had to look it up. We've got a tenant and a lot of tenants that have lived more than 20 years in our communities. We've got 30 or 40 that have lived there for 30 or 40 years, and we actually have 2 that have been there more than 50 years in our communities, right?
Wow.
So yeah, I mean they're fairly sticky, right? It's really akin to that of living in a subdivision, right? So what happens is when someone owns their home, they rent the lot underneath them. If they decide that they want to move at any point in time, number one, it's expensive to move the home, and so a lot of times they'll just put it up for sale with a realtor or FSBO, and they'll keep paying their lot rent until they're ready to leave, and buy another home, whatever it might be. Someone else moves in, takes over that lot rent responsibility, but that home typically always stays there. Very rarely ever moves out. But then you got people that, they live in the same home that they grew up in. And we have a lot of those folks that live in our communities. They've been there a very, very long time. But even when they do leave, most of the time, there's never a blip as far as like the income coming in, because they basically pay that lot rent until they find a buyer that takes over that lot rent responsibility. So it's just, it's very different than that of a traditional apartment that, I don't know what the data suggests today, but historically it always seemed as though like the average tenancy was somewhere between like 16 and 18 months, give or take. And ultimately a tenant could just get up and leave very easily out of an apartment, right? Put the mattress on the roof and drive away in the middle of the night. That's a little bit harder to do in the mobile home park space. So that was a big one. Another one was just the barrier to entry, I didn't realize, back then when he kind of brought this up to me, but the big barrier to entry, because new parks aren't being built, just municipalities don't like them, and so there's this major supply demand imbalance. It's even bigger today because parks have continually gone away. There hasn't been enough new supply to outpace the parks that are either being redeveloped or shut down for other reasons, and now we've got this, what's always been a problem, affordable housing. It's even more of a crisis now, right? And so I truly believe that supply demand imbalance paired with this massive need for quality affordable housing, like it's literally, mobile home parks are the perfect ingredient to solve that problem. I could put you anywhere in any city that we own a mobile home park, and if you want to compare, to a C-class apartment complex, whatever they might rent for in that city, I guarantee that the mobile home we have is nicer. It's probably more akin to that of like a B-class apartment. It's nicer quality. You got your own little yard space. You have room for parking 2 cars. You don't have a neighbor above, below, or either side of you. And I guarantee it's at least 15 to 20% cheaper than what you actually would pay for that Class C apartment complex. And so, like, it's a quality housing option that it's finally starting to gain a lot more traction. I think people are starting to realize that mobile homes really are a good, solid place to live. They're built just like stick-built homes, and they're starting to lose that negative stigma that's been attached to them for so long. But again, so those are some of the areas, the reason that we love it. On top of that, the mom and pop aspect of the industry, it's very fragmented, and so there's still a lot of, and this is quickly going away. It's quickly becoming consolidated, but there's still a great deal, a great number of mom and pop owners, sometimes the original generations that own these communities that just, not that they haven't run it like a business, but they've left a lot on the table. For example, we bought a community about a year ago from the original developer. He had owned it 46 years, 47 years. And back when he built it, water and sewer wasn't very expensive at all. And so it was very common. It was just included in the lot rent. However, you and I both know that, when number one, aging infrastructure, number two, when folks don't have to pay for something, it's not that people purposely abuse it, but like you're not as conscious of how much, how long that shower was, or that you left the hose running in the front yard, right? And so aside from like his market rents or his lot rents being below market, we went in and sub-metered the community, and basically his water and sewer bill on an annual basis was like $140,000. And so we essentially put meters in, cost us about $40,000, and then literally proportionally billed back the water and sewer usage to each resident. And that's, the payoff on the meters was literally in a third of a year, and all that additional savings goes to the bottom line. So there's a lot of opportunities like that in this sector as well. So lots of reasons to like the space.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe tell us a little bit about some of the first ones that you've bought as far as the mobile home parks.
Sure. Sure.
And how you got into them, and if there was value add or turnarounds, kind of what you had an opportunity to do to make that happen.
Yeah, and we're absolutely always value add guys. I like being able to identify a problem and also the solution at the same time, and know that the solution is going to make me money. And I think there's a saying, like in real estate, right? You'll be able to figure out how to solve complex problems, and literally you'll rise to the top 1%. And so it's kind of the same thing exists with mobile home parks. But that very first park, it was, like I said, I think I'd mentioned it was in Atlanta. I actually bought it off of LoopNet. Funny enough.
Really?
I'm not going to say that. There was a period of time, and I'm sure if you'd spent time scouring LoopNet and Crexy, and maybe some of the other, a lot of the MLS divisions have their own like little commercial element to it in different marketplaces. And there was a number of parks that we bought in that manner. And most of the time what happened, like this particular park in Atlanta, I found on LoopNet, but it was just misrepresented. It was a very poor listing. It didn't have hardly any information, did have an address, but it was missing anything relevant for someone to come in and say, you just get a basic understanding of the financial performance. What am I really buying? And the guy that had the listing was a residential agent that was like an hour away. This is the REO. So the bank basically hired this agent. Don't know why. He wasn't even a commercial agent. Didn't know how to evaluate this property. And so I don't think it just didn't get traction. And on top of that, it was just back in 2011. So like the world was a little bit more of a distressed state than it is today. And so it just didn't have as many eyeballs looking at it. But anyway, we bought that. It was 34 units. 34 homes came with the deal. 34 of them were completely, actually 33 were vacant. There was one family living in one of the units. The rest were vacated. The bank basically kicked everyone out. Don't know why. A lot of the units got vandalized. But long story short, it was in a good part of Atlanta. It was in a good area. And those units that were in there weren't even all that old. And so we just went in and we literally renovated every single home. Had like 4 crews working at a time. Renovated every single home. Lot rents when we took over that community, I think the lot rents were, I want to say they're under $200 a month. The market when we bought it were like $350. And so, when we took it over, we immediately pushed lot rents to $350. Whenever we sold any of those homes, when we sold the park, again, I think it was about 2.5 years ago. Maybe it's been almost 3 years now. Lot rents were up to about $540, give or take. But it was just, I looked at that deal. Here's how I looked at it. Number one, I was a little scared because I'd never bought a park before, and this one's completely vacant, and it was 8 hours away from where I live. So it was just, there's a lot of elements going on there. But I looked at it had 34 mobile homes there, and how I kind of broke it down and decided to either pass or go is I was like, you know what? I don't know what the hell I'm getting into here. But worst case scenario, I know that each one of those mobile home shells, if I had to get out of this deal and get my money back, each one of those mobile home shells is at, on a fire sale price, is at least worth $10,000. And that's they would fly off the shelves at 10 grand. So worst case, we got the bank down to 220, I think it was $220,000 that we paid for this thing. And so I was like, worst case, if I just had to sell all the homes, I'd get my money back. I'd be stuck with a piece of land. Don't know what it's really worth, but it'd be worth something, right? And we'd be able to get all of our money back out of the deal. Didn't have to do that. It went a lot better than what I anticipated. And that was the first one. It took about a year to stabilize it. Did a cash out refinance about 2 years into it. Got all of our original capital back out of it and then some. And like I said, just held it for nearly a decade before we decided to sell it. So that was the first. And then it went pretty fast from there. We bought a second one in North Carolina and then a third one in North Carolina. And literally ended up buying about 10 parks in the first 3.5 years, and just really wanted to prove the concept. Wanted to build SOPs, some processes behind the business model, and then fast forward today, we've done we bought over 60 communities, have gone full cycle on probably close to 20, maybe 25 of them, and love the business still as much as we did back then. So just. Unfortunately, the words got out to a lot of other people about how great it is.
Right, exactly.
A little bit more competition nowadays than what it used to be.
For sure. What about on that first one? Just curious. 30-something. It sounds like park-owned homes. So what was you took them? Did you initially rent them, or did you sell them right away when they were rehabbed to new owners?
That's a great question. So. We would do it like a rent to own program on them. We sold a couple of them outright cash, but it wasn't many. It was probably about a handful, if I can recall. Again, this is a weird time in the market. A lot of people were unemployment was higher. It was just different. People were in a different financial state, and so we had no issue doing like a rent to own. And we normally get a couple $1,000s down. And I think when we started, I think our payments. We're maybe all in lot rent plus the house payment. I want to say it's $700 a month. Again, this is back in 2011, so $700 a month. And then by the time we sold it, the rents all in, all inclusive were over $1,000 a month. So you went on a rent to own program. Some people make it through the program, some don't. Those that don't, you basically recycle it and go back in, renovate it, and do that same thing again. But back then there weren't really good financing programs for mobile homes. Today it's very different. So today there's actually a number of lenders that specifically lend on the mobile homes themselves that are in parks. And so today our business model looks a little bit different than that of what it did in the past. While we still do a lease to own option, we have a number of lenders. If someone's got a 580 or 600 credit score and they've got a good job, steady job, and make enough income, then I can absolutely get them financed into that home. And that way I don't have to keep that thing on my balance sheet. I'd rather get it off the balance sheet, get them in there as a homeowner / lot renter, and then it takes all the maintenance responsibility off my plate. So that's the primary objective today. It's just that wasn't really much of an option back then. That just didn't exist because there was not many lenders in the space back in that period of time.
Yeah.
So in a perfect world, Keith, we would own 0 homes. So I'll just break it down. I'll summarize that. In a perfect world, we would own 0 homes in our portfolio. we know that we do not live in a perfect world. And so for that reason, I think we've got about 3,000 lots in our portfolio at present time. And I think we probably own about 400, somewhere 400 homes, give or take. And we're always like, we've got a community right now we're bringing in. We just ordered 10 homes yesterday for it, order another like 30 over the next year for that community to infill vacant lots. And so again, the objective will be to sell those homes off. But there's a chance that depending on how fast the market absorbs them, from a sales perspective, we might have to, mix it up a little bit. Maybe we sell 40% of them. Maybe the other 60%, we do on a lease to own. And then over a period of time, we can convert those lease to owns into a more of a complete sale, or, a couple might turn. And, so like, it's just, you got to kind of mix it up. Every market's a little different than the next. And, but in a perfect world, we would own zero.
Yeah. Makes sense. And on the ones that you're backfilling now that you've been doing this for quite some time, are you putting just strictly new homes in there? Are you ever messing with lightly used homes, or what?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Years past, it was much easier to find quality used homes at a fair price, to where the economics were better. You could justify taking the time, energy, and effort to go find used homes in the local market, move them, put them in there. You still have to do some light rehab to them, and then have some spread there to where you can actually, pocket a profit. That pretty much when I'd say it's been at least 4 or 5 years since we bought a used home. There's a couple of reasons. Number one, they got way more expensive. It's hard to justify the cost. It's expensive to move them. You got to rehab them. And now, okay, I'm into this used home now for $40,000. I could have just bought a new one for $55,000, right? That's brand new. Right. And so on top of that, if you're trying to infill a lot of spaces, it's just very inefficient to go out and try to find, 10, 15, 20 used homes in a particular region and get them in a timely manner. Logistically, it's a nightmare. If you think about it, you got to go look at them. You got to get movers. You got to break them down. The people have to move out of them that you bought it from, and just all these elements. Whereas with the new, I just call a factory and say, we need 15 of that floor plan. How soon can you have them? Those 15 are going on these 15 lots, and let us know when the driver's heading our way. That's pretty much how it goes down now. So right now we just order those homes, and they'll be off the line in about 7 weeks, and be ready to. It'll take us another about 2 weeks to set them and get them ready for moving. So literally in 2.5 months, we'll have 10 brand new homes ready for sale. And could have had 20, could have had 30, right? Like, just we don't like to buy more than what we know that we can. We haven't brought any homes in this community yet. And so I want to see how fast it absorbs 10 homes before I bring in 20 or 30. It's in a cold market, and I don't want us to go into fall or wintertime of next year with homes sitting there vacant. So just trying to do a little test run now. And if it goes as planned, we'll probably bring in another 15 or so before it gets too cold.
Yeah, it makes sense. What, as far as floor plans that you prefer, if you're going to have one that you say, hey, and maybe this varies from market to market, but what are you looking for? 3 2s, 2 2s? What are you typically feeling?
I mean, if it's an all age community, meaning that families live there, typically 3 2s are the way to go. And typically you try to put most of the time it's a single wide that we'll put. We haven't found that you can justify. You can't get a premium a lot of time. You can get a premium on maybe the rents or the sale price, but not enough of a premium to justify bringing like a double wide in. It's got double the transport costs, double the setup cost, yada, yada, yada. But normally a 3-bedroom, 2-bath single wide, the biggest floor plan that will fit on that respective lot, if it's a family community. And then if it's a community that's either a senior community or mostly it's senior demographic that you're serving, then normally it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, but we'll try to get a floor plan that maybe just has a much larger master and then has that secondary bedroom for like a guest bedroom or larger living area. But like a lot of times they don't need that 3rd bedroom, nor do they want it. They'd rather have a bigger 2nd bedroom or a bigger living room. And so that's how we make the determination. But with all that being said, we actually did just order 2 double wides. This community I was just telling you about, it's actually 12 homes we're buying, but 2 of them are double wides because it's a really high end area. Yeah. And I actually believe, I'm going to test it, but I believe that we'll be able to get enough of a premium to justify bringing the double wides in, which they go way faster than single wides. I mean, in a perfect world, they all be double wides. You get a better resident base for the most part, more demand for the product. But again, it's hard a lot of times to justify financially bringing those in versus a single wide.
Yeah, and the look is a lot better, if you have a park of, mainly double wides, but yeah, like you
That's
said, you
right.
can't always make that work. Tell me a little bit maybe about, so you bring these homes in, and is it your property manager who's showing and selling the homes? Do you have a separate team that's doing that? What does that look like, with
Yes.
Sunrise Capital Investors?
So Sunrise Communities is our vertically integrated property management company. So Sunrise Capital is our investment arm. Sunrise Communities is the property management. It's all in house. So we have regional directors. We've got an asset manager on like the executive level. We've got district managers, that kind of oversee the portfolio. But on a property level, we've got community managers. And depending on the size of the community, that might mean one community manager for the community, or it might be one community manager and two assistant community managers if it's a much larger community. But there's an on-site staff there that kind of handles the day-to-day, the rent collection, handing out notices, dealing with vendors, things like that. And then we have our sales and marketing. We do a little different than most. A lot of folks rely upon their community managers to also act as their sales and leasing arm of the business. And I've found that it's very difficult to find someone that has both a good operational personality, that's very fitting for like a community manager, but also is a good salesperson. It's very like they're just two different personality traits, and it's very hard to find someone that's really good at both of them. And so what we've done is just let the community manager do the operations, the day-to-day stuff. And then we've centralized the sales and leasing. So we got a whole team that literally they're off site, and they handle every posting on Craigslist, every posting on Zillow. They handle every inquiry. So like they're the central point that any inquiry comes in through. They set up the showings, and then our community managers basically just act as a liaison. Like they'll go open up the doors, answer any additional questions about the community. But really, we've got a sales and leasing team that handles most of the sales process, even all the way down to like the documentation via DocuSign, whether it be a purchase and sales agreement or a lease to own. They handle 90% of it, and the community manager handles just a little bit. Really, the community manager is just I'll open the door for you. I know you've already talked to David or Sammy over there, but I'm going to open the door for you. And if you have any questions about just the area that I can answer, I'm here to answer that, because our sales and leasing team typically doesn't know maybe some more intimate details about like the neighborhood or, the school districts and things like that. But so that's how we handle things.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I've heard of a couple other folks that are doing it that way now too. And it makes sense to me. I mean, I'm a sales guy. And so, obviously somebody who's a manager can be really good at what they do, but don't necessarily have that sense of urgency, don't necessarily know how to facilitate the deal to actually close. So.
Well, it's, we've also found that there became a lot of inefficiencies. I'd rather have a team of three that handle all of it for all the communities, and they're the accountable parties, rather than having, your community manager. You got 15, 20 communities, you got 15, 20, maybe more community managers that are accountable for posting ads on Facebook, responding to inquiries on Facebook, doing follow-ups after a showing, right? To find out how to go. If you don't hear back from that person, if they don't do an application, like who's calling them back in 24, 48 hours, right? Like number one, it's a lot for one person to do. Number two, it's just trying to, have accountability over all that, a large portfolio like that's very difficult for any like regional or district manager to handle. And so our sales and lease team, they're incentivized completely independently of the community manager. And so they're incentivized to not only, talk someone through a unit, but also follow up thereafter. So whenever that manager opens the door, shows the unit, we want to get feedback. So they're incentivized to call back and get feedback. How'd you like the unit? How did it show? How did it smell? Because a lot of times we just see pictures, like our construction manager, we rehab a unit or whatever. Like a lot of our reliance is on pictures, right? Of like how we price a unit. Is it done? Is that punch list done? Like, is that thing ready to go on the market? Sometimes pictures just don't do justice, right? Like they don't show the little things that are important. You can't smell it through a picture, right? And so we incentivize them to follow up on little things like that, which we found is absolutely critical, because otherwise we would have never known. The community manager's not going to tell us that the unit stinks, because now that falls on her shoulders, because she should have never put that home in the market if it stunk, or if it had a hole in the wall that we couldn't see in the pictures or something like that. So it's just creating an accountability sphere of everyone involved.
Yeah, for sure. And then what about the size? So you have obviously just a huge portfolio, but what are some of the larger parks that you have? What are some of the things with the larger ones that you find? You mentioned having a manager on site and then maybe 2 assistant managers, things that you have to put in place for at certain levels or numbers of units.
Yeah, so I would say our average park, in size wise, is probably about 150 spaces. We've got a number that are smaller than that, but then we have this one that kind of skews the whole bucket. And we bought it's a recent acquisition in the last 4 months. It's 738 spaces, and so it's
Wow.
like a small city. And so that one is the anomaly of the portfolio, and that we've got in of the 738 homes, there is a contingent of vacant lots in there. I think about 60 vacant lots, but and so the remainder of that makeup, I think there's about 120 park owned homes that came with the sale, and then the rest are tenant homes. So of those 120 park owned homes, we acquired probably about 80 of them were rentals, just regular rentals. And they were newer homes, but they're rentals, and so we have 2 full-time maintenance techs in that community. Literally, that's what they do. They get maintenance calls on these units, and as time goes on, we'll convert these things to either sales or lease to owns, and we'll try to dwindle down that maintenance responsibility. We've got groundskeepers in that park as well. We've got a whole team of groundskeepers. It's huge. I think it's 140 acres or something like that encompasses, and so it's just a big area that has to be kept up, and so. That park's again a little bit of an anomaly. Like we have a completely different staffing plan there than what we have in basically any other community. In fact, it's the only community where we actually have a W-2 maintenance guys or handyman or rehab crews. All the other communities we've got, our managers, community managers are on payroll. They're W-2, or assistant managers are on W-2, but any rehab crews that we work with, any outside vendors, they're just that. They're outside vendors. They're 1099, and we found that that's a much more efficient operation on the normal size communities of 150, 200 spaces. Outside of that is like some other things that we've put in place, that we feel are very helpful. So we have it's like an after hours call center, so if someone has any type of maintenance issue in the park, like we don't have it go directly to like the community manager. We found that in the past, we used to have community managers that had their own cell phone that were like company phones, and like they would get calls all hours of the night. They didn't have a good work-life balance. Yeah. And so we've got normal working hours inside our communities now. In fact, most of our managers live outside the community, which in the past we used to actually have them live in the community. We found that it's more beneficial to have them, again, your work-life balance, separate, from their work life after hours. And then after they leave, we've got it roll over to an after-hour service that these folks are trained to take emergency calls, and typically they can handle, by just asking a few questions, they can normally handle about 90% of the calls that come in that seemingly were emergency, but really aren't an emergency. And then those that are an emergency, basically, we've got like a whole hierarchy of dials that it goes through after that fact. So it goes first to the community manager, and so they know if that phone rings after hours, like it is absolutely emergency. And it doesn't happen often, but it's an emergency. And then if they don't answer, it goes to the district manager. If they don't answer, it goes to the regional manager. It basically works its way up the ladder until someone gets that call. And most of the time, that call would have been, a fire. A main water line break, something that's pretty dramatic that couldn't wait until the next day. But and then outside of that, as far as some other things we put in place as we've grown, it's just different layers. Years past, we had literally one director of operations that literally was direct point of contact with every community manager, but yet it wasn't. He might have been overseeing 9 or 10 people, not 9 or 10 community managers. But as we've grown, we've had to put additional layers in there to basically help. Again, create the efficiencies that ultimately, became inefficiencies because there wasn't enough bandwidth. And so now we've got district managers and that typically oversee a couple states, and then they report up to a regional manager. And it's just that way we're seeing the communities more often. We want to be making on-site visits at least every 3 months, 4 times a year to these communities to ensure that the community managers are enforcing the rules, that the curb appeal is really good, and just again, you take your eye off the prize, things can deteriorate fairly quickly. So,
yeah, for sure. What about property management software? This is more for me. I'm asking questions that, the audience is probably like, oh, wait a minute, we're going deep on certain things. But no, just curious what you guys typically use.
we use Rent Manager, and we have
Yep.
for 10 plus years. Back then it was like the best of the best. I'm not saying that it's not today. And I'm by no means of everyone in our company. I am not the master on it at all. In fact, I'm probably the worst on it. Anyway, so we've got like a dedicated guy on our team that's been with us for quite some time. Like I forget what his title was, but basically he's whatever the top designation you can have of being like a rent manager master. He's that guy.
Yeah.
We actually hired him about 5 years ago, so he kind of runs that side. But he helps us with integrations and things like that. But it's good. But I would say even then, we probably only truly use like 30% of its overall capabilities. There's just
Right.
a lot that it can do. One of the guys we recently hired over, one of the executives, we brought him over from one of the really large groups, and they use Manage America. That's another one of the big ones that's been around for a long time. And I started seeing some people talk about, I've never even done a demo or anything. I've seen a lot of people talk about AppFolio. I know that's mostly for like multifamily, but I don't know if they have a mobile home park, kind of division of it, but heard AppFolio is really intuitive. And then I think Yardi came into the space, I think 5 or 6 years ago as well. Whereas historically they had always been multifamily. But again, it's such a burden to go to something new, and it's not broke. Why fix it?
Right.
We got other priorities to deal with, and it works just fine and does its job, and we keep moving on and focusing on bigger things. So how about yourself?
Yeah.
Is that what you're using as well in your business?
That's what I'm using, but that's what I just started using. And so for me, it's a matter of, and it's myself and my wife. So it's there's not I don't have anybody that's just dedicated on that. And I wish I did, because there is a little bit of a learning curve with it.
Yeah, there's some good forums out there, but I mean, it's definitely not. It doesn't work for my brain. I don't think it's intuitive at all. It could be laid out much better than what it is, but again, it's built on a basis of an older software program, right? It's been around for I don't know how long, and I don't think they've gone through any major revamps in the last decade. So, but it still does the job and does it well. So,
yeah, for sure. Well, I know we're running a little bit long, and we didn't even get to parking lots. So do you have just a few more minutes where maybe we could talk about that?
Absolutely.
All right.
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Tell me a little bit about that and what you find works really well with it. And, we were talking a little bit ahead of the show with one of the guests I had. And he mentioned that he was out of it before COVID. It sounded like there was maybe a little bit of pain points during COVID with it, but maybe not where you have yours.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, parking got its butt kicked during COVID. I mean, just, think about it. Lots of downtown areas, urban cores were completely shut down. Office buildings were completely vacant, and now half of them are still vacant, right? And a lot of parking assets, they derive their demand from office buildings in downtown locations. So there still is a lot of pain, a lot of institutionally owned stuff. A lot of it attached to like an office, but even more pain in the office, right? But yes, the industry saw it got complete whack during COVID, but not all of it. So like most of our assets, in fact, all of them, some of our assets actually performed better during COVID than even pre-COVID or even post-COVID. So for example, we bought an asset in Clearwater Beach during COVID, right in our backyard, one of the top beaches in the country. It's a 702 stall parking garage. We bought from the city of Clearwater. Fairly new. It was like built about 7 years ago now. But anyway, everyone was locked down, so everyone's going to the beach, right? And everyone's coming to Florida because their state was restrictive and this, that, and the other. So it actually, other than like maybe like a 4 or 5 month period of time where like we really had like the legit lockdowns here in Florida, it thrived. It absolutely thrived. In fact, it did better in 2022 than actually what it did. I mean, it just did slightly less in 2023, but like COVID, it was a rock star. And the same goes with our other parking assets. They were just in markets that weren't shut down. Still were they had a multitude of demand drivers. This is the important fact. This is something. If anything to take away this. And I think you understand why maybe our assets didn't suffer while many others did. I've got to see 5 unique demand drivers in order for us to even take first look at a parking asset. Of those 5 unique demand drivers, government, phenomenal, right? Like courthouses, things of that nature. I want entertainment, bars, restaurants, things of that nature. I want some type of sports arena. More than one's even better. Office, okay, but office can't make up more than like 20% of the overall demand of the actual garage. It's got to be the lowest on the tier stack of demand drivers. And then hotels is another really good one as well. Lots of hotels cannot facilitate their actual parking demands, and so they have to use neighboring garages and parking lots for their valet or just even normal nightly stays. And so if it doesn't have the diversity of those five, we don't even consider it. And on top of that, we want to buy it in markets. Most of the time it's red states. Most of the time it's thriving markets. So Clearwater Beach, great market. We just bought an asset the middle of last year, right in downtown Phoenix. It's literally across the street from the courthouse. It's two blocks away from the Footprint Center where the Phoenix Suns play. It's another block away from where the Arizona Diamondbacks play. It's right in the heart of downtown. It's got a litany of demand drivers, more than five. And Phoenix is a stable market, and Phoenix didn't really see much of a blip during COVID either. It was fairly wide open. So we didn't have we saw only performance enhancements during COVID, and definitely didn't see any of the lulls that a lot of other folks did. However, with that being said, it doesn't mean that we're completely insulated from it. It doesn't mean that some type of black swan event couldn't impact us, even though we've got, we only look at things that have five unique demand drivers. But I do think that we're really hedging our bets with only looking at things that have got that diversity. That way, if one of them dries up, we've got four others that can make up for it. Whereas a lot of the ones that are in downtown areas that we're just relying upon maybe a hotel and an office, with most of it being an office, guess what? Hotels and offices shut down, and offices are not back yet. And so like those parking garages are just empty, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's a scary thought. And luckily,
sure.
None of those are in our portfolio.
No, that's great. I love it. The five demand factors makes a whole lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
What and again, I want to be respectful of your time. I know we're going a little bit long here. Maybe if you could just let everybody know how they could find out more about you, Kevin, and if they wanted to invest with you, what they would need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you guys want to learn more about parking lots, we actually wrote it's like a white paper. It's called Parking Lot Profits. You can go to parkinglotprofits.com. That will actually give you that would truly give you, the meat and potatoes of why we like the asset class. I mean, it's not a 400-page book, but it definitely will give you the details of why we love the asset class and why we, see a continued demand, not just in the next decade, but multiple decades moving forward for just really well located parking assets. And so, but outside of that, if you want to learn a little bit more about me or even listen to my podcast, you can go over to kevinbupp.com, my personal website. And then our company, Sunrise Capital Investors, if you want to learn about the types of deals that we do, we've got a lot of case studies on that website. So we actually, not every deal we've done, but a lot of the deals, we actually do pretty thorough case studies on the website. Some of them even have attachments of like appraisals and things like that you can kind of dive into. You can go over into investwithsunrise.com and you can learn more about what we got going on there. So, and with that, you can find me on social links as well. Just type in Kevin. I got such a unique last name that's pretty hard not to find me. You just type that into Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn. Pretty easy to track down.
Sounds good. All right. I got two last questions for you that I ask every guest. And the first one is, what advice would you give somebody who's maybe just starting out in their investment journey?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I mean, there's so many resources out there available today. A lot of them even free. To whereas I feel like it was more difficult when I got rolling. Although Dave was my mentor, and I met other mentors along the way. And there was real estate investment groups that met once a month. Right, we get together on Tuesday nights once a month, and that was our network. I feel like it's so much easier nowadays to have that expansive network and to meet others that either are doing what you want to do or have the similar dreams and are maybe they can plug you into a network that can get you where you want to go. And so I just educate yourself. One could argue there's almost too much information out there. And so be very selective with where you spend your time. I think, trying to have a good, clear vision of what it is you want to spend your time in. And what I mean by that is, as we talked about earlier, mobile home parks, I love them. I'd say that they're the best asset class, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of other ways to make money in real estate, whether it's mobile home parks, parking, multifamily, self-storage, again, you name it, like just single family. Pick the one for whatever reason you feel it's the best suited for you. And I guarantee that you can find thousands of people that make a lot of money and become millionaires in whatever niche that is. Pick one, ignore everything else because there's a lot of noise out there, and go spend all your time listening to the podcast. You're reading the books, go to the networking groups, find the guys in there that are specifically experts in that particular niche and learn as much as you can about it while ignoring everything else that's going to come at you, because you're going to get bombarded with a bunch of other stuff of why that's not good. You should be doing this or that or the other, and just ignore it all and just focus. I mean, if you do that, there is no way that you won't be a successful real estate investor. But I think most folks, they get distracted easily, right? Or they don't put enough time into it. They think I read a book and I did this, that, and the other. The book told me, and it didn't work. It's okay. Well, maybe you didn't do it right. Self-reflect a little bit and read the book again. Maybe you missed part 3 or something like that, right? But just if you put the time in and you stay focused, I guarantee that you'll find success.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. All right, last question for you, Kevin. And I've enjoyed our time together. This has been great. How about book recommendation? Anything that you've read recently? It doesn't necessarily have to be real estate related, but just something impactful that you've read recently.
I wish Keith Wenner with DLP Capital Group. And I'm reading his book right now, and I can't think of the name, but it is a phenomenal book about building just a A-class organization. Sorry, I'm going to look it up because it's a phenomenal book. Like it's the first book that I've actually. Right? Don, yeah, that's it. Don Wenner. It's the first book that of recent time that when I picked it up, I could barely put it down. It is phenomenal. And it's probably, maybe it's just because it's good timing for me as well. Like the message in it's like hit home and it's perfect timing. But it's like building an elite team. Okay, building an elite organization.
Yeah.
If you're looking, if you're just getting, if you're at the point where you've built like a little portfolio, starting to hire some people, or maybe the plans to hire some people here in the near future, or maybe you got a little bit of a team and you're looking to expand upon that team to help you get to the next level, go read this book. It's absolutely phenomenal. I'll leave it at that. Like, so that I'm about 3/4 of the way through it. And like I said, I picked it up. I haven't been able to really put it down aside from having to get a shower, go to bed, or, actually get some work done. It's a phenomenal book.
It is. Yeah. I listened to it on Audible, and it was a great one for sure. So, all right, Kevin. Well, I sure appreciate it. This has been great. Glad we got a chance to do this.
Yeah. Absolutely, my friend. Pleasure being here, and I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely.
Being that you're still here, I trust you found value in this episode. I personally wish I would have known these guests and strategies when I started my wealth creation journey. Go to wealthflow.capital to subscribe to our newsletter. And as a free gift, we will send you our quarterly market report and the top 10 things to look for in an investment opportunity. Take a minute to give our show a rating and review. Help us reach 1 million professionals by subscribing and sharing this episode with someone you know who could also find value in it.